Hi there, I'm the Mythkeeper. Welcome back to my channel, the best place on the internet for Pathfinder lore and history. This is a very special video. This is my 3-year anniversary video. So I've been on YouTube for 3 years. It's been such a ride. I can't believe what started with essentially a singleton video that I wanted to make for my own personal gaming group so they could get the full history of Golarion in one place. Became a whole channel. With approaching 30,000 subscribers. Crazy, I can't believe it. Thank you so much for all the support over the last 3 years, all of you that have been watching, and I'm excited to bring more content to you guys over the coming years as well. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that every year I've done a special anniversary video. In my first year, I had my partner interview me. In my second year, I interviewed my players for what was then my upcoming War for the Crown game, which is now pretty close to conclusion, which is really exciting. This year, I'm doing something similar. I'm going to be interviewing some folks. I thought what would be fun for this year that I've been on YouTube for a while. I wanted to take the opportunity to share some other Pathfinder creators with you guys that you might want to go and check out. So for this year, I am interviewing 4 other awesome Pathfinder creators right here on YouTube that you can go and check out. I'm going to be asking them some questions. They're going to be telling us a little bit about themselves, what they like about Pathfinder, that sort of thing. So I've got a great group in store for you. Pathfinder, Bramble Bear, the local disaster tour guide, and Phoebe Bain. All of them are different, all of them are fun. Go check out their channels. With that being said, let's jump right into the interview. Let's start by having you plug your stuff. Who are you? What do you do? And where can the people find you?
Hi everybody, my name is Phil and I run the channel Pathfinder here on YouTube. For almost 2 years now, I've been making Pathfinder videos focused on the lore of the setting. My 2 main series are called Pathfinder Deities and So You Want to Play. Pathfinder Deities pretty much is what it says on the tin. I pick a deity in the Pathfinder game setting and talk about them for about 20 to 30 minutes. My goal is to give players and GMs tools and inspiration to incorporate the gods of Pathfinder into their storylines and characters. My other main series, So You Want to Play, takes a look at the published 2nd edition adventures and adventure paths. Each video in the series serves as a video player's guide, presenting prospective players with the lore they need to understand going into the campaign, as well as some mechanical insight into what builds, classes, and ancestries might be especially effective. Finally, I sometimes dive deep into some of the key NPCs in the setting, like Queen Abigail II of House Thrune, or Baba Yaga, the Mother of Witches. Last Halloween, I did a 3-hour special on Tar-Baphon, the Whispering Tyrant, and his followers in the Whispering Way. My crowning achievement, however, is The 12 Days of Sinmas, a 13-hour novel-length examination of the Runelords of ancient Thassalon.
Hey, howdy. I am Phoebe Bain, Goblin Magus VTuber extraordinaire. I talk about all sorts of tabletop games like Pathfinder and Starfinder over on my Twitch and my YouTube, both of which are at Phoebe Bain. There, I go over new book releases, do some interviews with developers, as well as do short-form content based around cool feats, abilities, and spells that I really like. And soon I should be coming out with some character creation videos, whether that be character creation tutorials, or builds based on characters from different media and fiction, or just builds based on cool feat interactions that I really like.
Hello Mythkeeper, my name is Mark and I am the local disaster tour guide, and I would like to thank you for inviting me to be part of this video series, and serious congratulations on another year on YouTube. Your channel is fantastic, I love your content, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So again, my name is Mark and my channel is called The Local Disaster Tour Guide. You can find it here on YouTube. I also have a small Discord community that is linked to in all of my videos. So those are kind of the 2 main places that you can find me and interact with me. As for my channel, I am a tabletop RPG channel. I like to pitch myself as a storyteller. In my own personal life, I just find the art of storytelling to be very interesting and very engaging. So I like to pitch my channel as a storytelling channel first. I focus almost exclusively on Pathfinder and Starfinder content. And that may be a bit strange, considering that those are often seen as crunchy games, not necessarily storytelling games. But I think that Paizo has some of the best writers in the TTRPG industry, and their approach to tabletop RPGs, I think, leads to some pretty fantastic storytelling. But overall, I just like to get on YouTube and talk about storytelling.
Well, definitely. I am Bramblebear. I am a GM with nearly 25 years experience now running multiple systems that include D&D, Starfinder, and Pathfinder, along with a host of similar TTRPG systems. I often stream live plays and am currently running the Starfinder playtest adventure Empires Devoured for Phoebe and a few of my friends. I just finished Bloodlords and Strength of Thousands after 2.5 years, all of which are on my YouTube channel in their entirety, and shorts for those memorable moments. I've started Horizons of the Vast conversion for 2nd edition, and my players have constructed an interactable NPC folio as well as an evolving spreadsheet with fully customizable exploration with notes as well as a dedicated charter for their settlement, so people can follow along with our group as we play the game. I've also recently done a history of the Pact Worlds for Starfinder, and we'll soon do a deep dive of Abalon coming out as well for some prospective players on the new adventure, Murder in Metal City, which I plan to run for people live. Oh, I nearly forgot. I also hold a monthly discussion on all the new APs for Pathfinder as they come out. We just concluded our in-depth look at Spore Wars, and we're continuing our discussion on Shades of Blood. If you're a GM who wants to run, come join us and see all the work involved with prep in our recap session segment.
What was your first experience with role-playing games? How did you get into Pathfinder?
My first tabletop RPG experience was actually on a Boy Scout winter camping trip in middle school. It was about 20 below zero, and no one wanted to leave the cabin. Eventually, one of the older scouts brought out what I now realize was the D&D 4th edition Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide. We played for a couple hours, during which I ran a halfling rogue who borrowed liberally from Bilbo Baggins. After that, I didn't play the game again until college. When I was in undergrad, some of my engineering buddies and I started playing through Horde of the Dragon Queen for 5e. That group fell apart, but that really got me into the RPG headspace. I first heard of Pathfinder a little later, when I was watching some old The Spoony One videos on YouTube. He kept bringing up the things he loved about this system called Pathfinder, and I decided to check it out. I bought the anniversary edition of Curse of the Crimson Throne, plus a copy of the core rulebook. After that, it was off to the races. I started collecting the APs and fell in love with the lore. After COVID hit, my wife and I found ourselves shut in a tiny apartment without easy access to friends or family. After a lot of trying, I finally convinced her to give Pathfinder a try. We jumped right into my copy of Curse of the Crimson Throne as a duet campaign, and she fell in love with the system. It's been our couple's hobby ever since.
Funnily enough, my first ever interaction with an RPG was Pathfinder 1st edition. Well, back in my freshman year of high school. My friend group and I wanted to get into RPGs because of one of their older brothers was really into Pathfinder at the time. But unfortunately, we never got past character creation because of scheduling issues and things like that. Sports, band, all that type of stuff. So I shelved that part of my mind that really liked character creation, things like that. Until around D&D 5e's release, maybe a year or two afterwards, where I started getting into it, started seeing stuff like Critical Role and things like that, playing it again. I'm like, oh, there's more than one tabletop game, of which I then decided to do nothing but play D&D 5e with my friends for about 5 years or so. And it was at that point, 5 years into it, I believe we all got really bored with D&D. like just the basic classes and monsters and stuff like that. We were getting like, you get 3 choices to make and you just kind of do the samey type stuff. We were like, yeah. So we started branching out into third-party subsystems, third-party classes, to the point where it wasn't really even D&D anymore. And that's when I saw like an article on a website, I don't remember which one it was, that was advertising like Paizo's upcoming Pathfinder 2nd edition, as well as the Fall of Plaguestone adventure. So I immediately went out, bought the core rulebook, bought the Fall of Plaguestone adventure, and instantly TPK'd my party on the first ever encounter. But even though it was a TPK, and one of my players didn't even get to even attempt to play the game, literally they died turn 1, they still all had a whole lot of fun with the system and really, really liked the character creation, things like that, so we started to keep going with it. And now it's at the point where I play Pathfinder 2e and Starfinder at least once or twice a week for the past like 5 or so years. And it's become a huge part of my life, and I kind of love it.
Okay, so my first experience with an RPG, I really didn't even understand what a tabletop RPG was. I had played some RPG-style video games, so I would have understood role-playing game in that context. But way back in middle school, me and one of my really good friends, we were obsessed with Star Wars, and we just decided that we wanted to pretend to be characters in Star Wars. So we invented our own game where we would run around and be characters in the Star Wars universe. And we came up with our own rules for this game. The rules were terrible. It was a horrible mishmash of like Magic the Gathering rules and some rules that we had pulled off some old computer games. It was not a very functional game, but it gave us what we wanted, the opportunity to be characters in Star Wars. And through middle school on into, I think, the 9th grade, I played in this Star Wars game with me and a couple of other friends. And then, in high school, at my first job at McDonald's, I met another friend who is a significant lifelong friend of mine. I started telling him about this Star Wars game that me and my buddies had created, and he looked at me and said, "You know that's a real thing, right?" And he introduced me to the idea of a Star Wars tabletop RPG. Now, he had actually played the old West End Star Wars game, for anyone who might be familiar with that system, but at the time, this little company I'd never heard of called Wizards of the Coast was publishing the original Star Wars D20. And I went out, I found that game, and I devoured it. Like, that was what me and my friends had been trying to create so many years prior. So, my first actual tabletop RPG was the Star Wars D20 system that was published by Wizards of the Coast. It was a spin-off of another little game that I had somehow never heard of up to this point called Dungeons & Dragons, in particular Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition. I went from Star Wars D20 to D&D 3.0. Shortly after that, D&D 3.5 came out, and I was a teenager with lots of disposable income, so I bought way too many of those books. And then I just kind of branched out into a lot of other tabletop RPGs. I played a lot of World of Darkness games. I played a lot of Call of Cthulhu. As I mentioned earlier, Shadowrun was one I really enjoyed. I just kind of spread out into a lot of different areas of the hobby from there. The way I ended up coming to Pathfinder, and if you played D&D 3.0, 3.5, you probably know where this story is going. Wizards of the Coast did not handle the transition to D&D 4th edition very well. I was one of the people that really felt that Wizards of the Coast was insulting to their player base in how they handled the transition to D&D 4th edition. And almost from the word go, it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. In all of that mess, one of the areas of the hobby I had expanded into was there was this company called Paizo that was publishing Dungeon and Dragon magazines, and I was purchasing all of those magazines. I really enjoyed a lot of the content that Paizo was putting out, and Paizo announced that they intended to make their own game that they called Pathfinder that would be compatible with the D&D 3.5 rules. And Pathfinder First Edition, a lot of people actually called it D&D 3.75, but I was one of the beta test, play test players for that. I gave some of the feedback to Paizo. Me and my group were very early adopters before Pathfinder First Edition was even fully published. But that's how I came to Pathfinder. I was one of the people that jumped ship from Wizards of the Coast because of the way that the company handled the transition to 4th edition.
My first real experience with TTRPGs was D&D 3.5, and that was unfortunately a Faerun campaign setting. I, however, started to love Eberron much more than I do the Sword Coast, because I felt like there was really a place for everything and for everyone, which is part of the reason why I love Pathfinder so much in Golarion. Pathfinder, I found out because of Owlcat Games' Kingmaker, and I absolutely played it for around 400 hours when it came out, and still failed the campaign multiple times, because there are time limits on certain story events, and if you don't do them, you automatically fail the campaign by a certain date. I didn't understand that at the time, and that was when I started writing these enormous feedback segments for developers, so they knew exactly what was happening on the player side of things. And looking at Kingmaker now, and what it became after about a year of development, and Wrath of the Righteous, when it first released by the same company, I can really tell that they listen not only to my feedback, but the feedback of other people as well, and we all benefited from it. I eventually went on to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, as my core group was getting tired of D&D 5e essentially being the same experience every time, and we really took to it with everything that was different, with the way that status effects and afflictions were handled. We really liked that. The rules for multiple situations, chases, among other things, was something D&D sorely lacked, and Pathfinder is especially structured in such a way that you can pretty much have anything befit the situation and still be able to use the level DC chart for mostly anything, including making your own subsystems, which are all basically off of victory points anyway. You can call them whatever you want, but they're still just victory points.
If you had to pick something, what would you say is your favorite thing about the Pathfinder campaign setting?
At a high level, my favorite thing about the setting of Pathfinder is the kitchen sink style the world presents. Gothic horror, African wizard grad school, and anime martial arts tournaments all exist within the same world, so players and GMs can tell a wide variety of stories while still remaining grounded in a familiar setting. I've heard some criticisms that the world feels a little unrealistic because of that, but in a world full of wizards and dragons, I don't really mind the setting having little pockets of genre-defined microcultures. Getting a bit more specific, my favorite component of the setting is, of course, Thassalon. I love the constantly unraveling mystery of a long-lost ancient arcane empire. It makes for an incredibly rich and detailed backdrop for storytelling. From rune giants to Lasala to the personality quirks of the individual rune lords, I find the whole topic endlessly entertaining. Needless to say, I'm crazy excited for the new Revenge of the Rune Lords adventure path later this year.
I think my favorite part about Pathfinder's setting is like a twofold thing. Because on one hand, I super love kitchen sink settings that just do everything all over the place, but also settings that aren't afraid to be weird with it. Like, there's so much aliens, like elves, rat folk, automatons, androids, all aliens. There's a crashed spaceship that has been salvaged by a bunch of barbarians that use it to fight alien robots. And then, like, 3 feet over, there's, like, a huge area where 2 countries used to be at war with each other because they're 1,000-year-old immortal wizard rulers hated each other and actually created a giant mana waste that's just raw magical energy in between those two countries. And in the center of that, there is a cowboy town chilling in a magical bubble. And you go over here, there's France. And it's just so much stuff all over the place. That's even going over like Chansha and that continent, or the other third continent nobody talks about that is canonically there, but it's like empty for you to put your own stuff on if you want to interact with the setting in your own way. And I just love weird things like that. Because individually, each country and stuff like that works as its own setting. You can have adventures set within just those countries or just those regions, but they also all connect together in like ways like politics and things like that, and all this other weird stuff going on. And even to the point where upcoming books like Battle Cry or whatever book is coming out afterwards, there's a lot of wars going to be happening in between them with like the Guardian Commander class, and then the Necromancer and the Runesmith class are very much Geb and Nex coded. And I love that so much because a lot of settings in other tabletop games, like back when I played D&D 5e, you just pretty much got the Sword Coast and then maybe a separate setting that's an entirely other universe like Eberron. Not to mention the fact that they've forgotten all about everything that's like east of the Swords Coast. Remember Al-Qadim? I do. They don't want you to remember. It's just stuff like that that I really, really love. And I yearn for more like interactions between countries and things like that.
Okay, so Mythkeeper, you should not have asked me this question, because I tend to obsess over the Pathfinder campaign setting, and I don't think you want a 3-hour video. You should not have asked me this. I guess one thing that I will say is Paizo, I think, one of the best things about their approach to this hobby is their setting writers and the incredible diversity of setting writers that they bring into their game. And when I ran D&D 3.0, 3.5, when I ran those older games, I often homebrewed my own worlds, because while I enjoyed reading about Forgotten Realms or some of the other core D&D settings, just overall, they never had quite the pull that I was looking for. Whereas with Paizo, I actually found their Golarion setting to be really, really engaging. I can't remember which Paizo author said this, but they once described their concept for their setting to be a kitchen sink setting that doesn't suck, which was their way of saying they really tried to write Golarion to reflect a diversity of different types of stories. So if you go to Ustalov, you're going to have your gothic horror style stories, whereas if you go down to the Mwange Expanse, you're going to have stories that are more akin to traditional African folklore, and you could do this all across the face of Golarion. Tian Sha is reflective of a lot of Asian storytelling and some of the different styles of stories that exist in that portion of our world. The real world is a place that is full of a variety of different stories and tales, and they all exist side by side and intermingle and influence each other. And I think that that's what Paizo did a good job of capturing in their setting. They looked at the whole of Earth and said, here are all of these different stories, how can we take inspiration from all of these different stories so that players and game masters can use them at their table. So, in a big picture view, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. I think Paizo overall has the best setting writers in the TTRPG industry, and it's a big reason that I continue to support Paizo. And I guess I should probably give an actual answer to that question. If I had to pick a favorite part of the Golarion campaign setting, it would be the Magambaya Magical Academy found in the Mwange Expanse. I love the Academy. I love a lot of the themes of the mixing of arcane and primal magic that are found there. I love Old Mage Jatimbe, a mage so epic that even his students are literally considered mythic level characters. If you don't believe me, look it up.
I'd say my favorite thing about the Pathfinder's Golarion star system is that there is a place for nearly everything, much like Eberron, which is why I found it so appealing. There's no one centralized place for adventure, as it happens all over the world and gives a variety of non-human and non-human-like ancestries a chance to be adventurers. I'm very much a fan of, going away from just humans in fantasy. They tend to take up the bulk of fantasy, and I don't really like them as the focus, but Pathfinder does focus on humans, but at least gives you the option to play other things. I'm very fond of awakened animals, and that you can actually play one, and that there are rules and feats for them that help customize and make them feel unique. I think that's Howl of the Wild. Reminds me of Uplifted Bears and Starfinder and other such ancestries that came up under similar means, where just like big groups of druids would just go around and awaken planets and just, new ancestry. More people. For the locales, however, in Pathfinder, I'd say Taldor, the best country ever. A Shining Kingdoms country that has gotten past its prime. It's kind of near like this economical and governmental collapse, but still pretends that it's very much a heavy hitter in the world. But it's definitely that friend that peaked in high school. Also heavily geared towards human superiority without actually really coming out and saying it directly for fear that it may sound insensitive, and instead chooses to say it in a more polite way.
You're the creator now. If you could add one thing to Pathfinder, what would it be?
More Rune Lords. No, but not really. I love the Rune Lords, but there's enough detail there for a dozen campaigns and adventures. Really, I think the setting is lacking a high-level, charismatic vampire lord to serve as a long-term antagonist. I'm a sucker for a Dracula-style, all-powerful vampire, and as much as I prefer Pathfinder to D&D, I really enjoy Strahd as a villain. Pathfinder has plenty of great undead villains, from the Whispering Tyrant Tar-Bathon, to Ghost King Geb, to Child King Walkenna, to Rune Lord Zutha. But there's something about vampires that I find particularly appealing. Maybe it's my love of Dracula and Nosferatu, maybe it's because I love the new Castlevania shows, or maybe it's just because I still love the Van Helsing film from 2004. Either way, I would love to see a vampire lord make a play for power in Ustalav in the future. Maybe General Malleus will finally rebel against Tar-Bathon from his fortress at Castle Cronquist. Or, more likely, maybe one of his lieutenants might overthrow him and seize control of the vampires of the Whispering Way. There's fertile ground here for some classic campy vampire action, so I'd love to see it explored in the future.
If I was put in charge, the first thing I'm doing is making a Lost Omens Arcadia and Lost Omens Numeria book. Both are two settings that I feel like are very much unrepresented now, either due to like technology-wise, just no lore in general-wise. Like Numeria, I want whatever the second edition version of that like big table of ship runoff, like the shippy sippy. I want to drink that and see what happens to me. I want to see all the cool technological weapons and monsters and other encounters to be had there. I want to see more about the different like barbarian tribes that are there that are utilizing this alien technology. There's just so much cool stuff that could be had there. And I think now that we have Starfinder Twee around the horizon, we should be getting something about that maybe soon, hopefully. But as far as Arcadia goes, I haven't been able to find much of anything about it, not even from first edition. Like there were some things here and there. I know about a couple of like settlements and I know there's cool owl people called Syrinx, but that's all I could really find back when I looked a long time ago. And I feel like, especially with Chewie and all the stuff happening in the world right now with the God's Reign and stuff like that, I want to know even more about it. I want like a Lost Omens Chansha world guide for it. Let me see all the different cultures. Let me see all the different settlements, different places to go. Because I'm pretty sure there's like Shalaxian gold miners there. Like I said before, there's the owl people, the Syrinx. I feel like that we have cool playable stats for, and just stuff like that. Like there's different snippets we've had so far. Like there's a god from there that's about like gun control, which is cool. And like there's like a couple NPCs I think I've seen. But I just want to explore more. I just want to see more of what the world has to offer because they haven't really gotten much in either of those respects.
If you've seen a few videos on my channel, you probably know the obvious joke I'm going to throw out here, which is some married characters that actually live for more than 3 consecutive weeks. I'm sorry, Paizo, but you have a really bad habit of using marriage as a setup for somebody's tragic backstory. Mauricio and Kira are going strong, but most of your other married characters don't live very long, and I'm just going to be honest, you did Naumika's husband dirty. Overall, when I look at the Pathfinder and Starfinder campaign settings, in keeping with the previous question, I think Paizo has done a pretty good job here. So, I don't know that there's a lot of stuff that I would personally like to add. I will say that my home table, we have our own kind of Pathfinder adjacent timeline. The events at our table don't necessarily match all of the events that happened in the official Golarion campaign setting. So our version of Golarion is a little bit different just because of the choices that my players have made over the years. Paizo, if you're looking for some suggestions, there's a major event in my campaign called the Curse of Wandering that has done some pretty catastrophic things to my setting. So, you know, if you need some suggestions, I've got that available. But as a general statement, I think Paizo has done a good job with their setting, and I really appreciate that they pull in such an array of different authors. So, overall, I don't have a lot of complaints here.
Oh, well, I definitely want to see more of Razmir. Campaign set entirely in Zaire, or Pathfinder Lodge in the newly established country. You know, to have the living god Razmir. I'd like to have more of that content, really, and see that developed. I felt like that was a really good part of Spore Wars that we just didn't get enough of, and it was just like a quick visit. We need more than that. I would say Tarbafon kind of steals the spotlight for a lot of the adventures, and it's because of him that we really see this where the developers are kind of like obsessing over introducing him into like every adventure path lately. Old Tarby feels like he's lonely more than anything else, and he likes to remind everyone he's still there on the Isle of Dread. He really doesn't know how to talk to people and often just inserts himself randomly into adventures like some sort of advertising campaign. I kind of want to see less of that. Tarby is kind of better at advertising than he is even at necromancy, and that's truly scary.
Finally, do you have a favorite adventure path, module, or player character that you've played? Tell me about it.
As a GM, I've actually only ever completed a single AP from start to finish, and that was Curse of the Crimson Throne. Since then, I'm in the middle of Iron Gods, which is on hiatus, and Skull and Shackles, which is also on hiatus, because I have a young child and finding time to play is tricky. I loved Curse of the Crimson Throne when I ran it. It has a nice mix of urban intrigue, dungeon crawling, and mystery solving. I highly recommend it to players and GMs, especially if you're looking for something which keeps the players tied to a single home-base city, which forms the emotional core of the narrative. On top of that, the Grey Maidens are nothing less than iconic as villainous henchmen, and they are one of my favorite organizations in the setting. Looking at the APs which I've read, but haven't run or played yet, my favorite is easily Curtain Call. It's a high-level, high-melodrama campaign with probably the campiest and most over-the-top plot I've seen in a Paizo AP so far. I love theatricality and performance in my stories, so this campaign about opera production and backstage drama is right up my alley. And, on top of all of that, the third act finale is nothing short of incredible, especially for someone with my particular focus on the lore of the game.
Do I have a favorite Pathfinder character? Yeah, me. Phoebe Bane is actually one of the first ever Pathfinder characters I ever played. And I played her all the way from level 1 to 20. She is a laughing shadow magus goblin with the assassin wizard dedication. At least she was back then. I have not made a remaster version of her yet because I'm lazy, but we went on so many adventures. She started off as like a feral goblin who tried to mug some elven nobles in the street who like smacked her down and were like, hey, we're adopting you now, do not resist. And then that's how I got all the frilly dresses, got the cool knife, and all that type of stuff. And then when I came of age, I set off my own adventures with a group of cool people where I proceeded to get horribly traumatized by the thought of undeath to the point of being scared of immortality as a concept, thanks to an encounter that I believe was like a modified version of one of the Pathfinder society scenarios where you like go underneath the puddles, like a theater in the puddles, and go and find like a ghoul, and depending on what you're doing with that adventure or whatever, the ghoul will attack you or not, and they almost TPK'd us, and that was scary and horrifying. Also came across a lot of items that you might see in the background. We've got Blightburn Crystal over there in a glass box, the thing that gives you a horrible disease. We've got some other crystals. We've got my knife up on the mantle behind me. We've got my spider tarantula on one chair, my mercurial mantle thing off the other. We've got one of the slates that like, there's two of them and they can like talk to each other up at my mantle behind me. You can't see it. There's so much stuff like, and so many memories I've had with her. And eventually, once we defeated the BBEG of the whole thing and reached level 20, Phoebe retired to her mansion in a demiplane she created to help teach the next generation of heroes, which is what I am doing with my VTuber stuff now. I go and teach people different games and different tabletop games and stuff like that. And it's been a whole wild ride. It's a whole lot of fun. She became a part of me and now is my entire internet personality and face of everything I do online, which is really fun and something you don't really see a whole lot. And I kind of love it.
So I will be honest, I don't run a lot of actual official adventure paths. And a lot of that really boils down to the group that I play with. I have a pretty large group. I've got a pretty diverse array of individuals who've come through over the years. But they do tend to share a trait of, if there is an edge to any map, they're going to walk to the edge of that map, look past the edge of the map and go, what's over there? I've just kind of discovered that my players tend to do that a lot, and if I'm being honest as a storyteller, I tend to reward that. So years ago, I came to the realization that my players are not going to stick to an adventure path no matter how hard I try. I've picked up a lot of adventure paths. I've read them for inspiration. One of the adventure paths I really enjoy personally is the Age of Ashes adventure path, because one of the main characters that you interact with in that story has some unique implications for that version of the character at my own gaming table. Probably my favorite personal Pathfinder 2e game that I've run so far was a campaign that I called Cold Hands, Cold Hearts, that was set in the nation of Irison and involved the player characters trying to help some peace negotiations between Irison and the land of the Lenorm Kings. And let me just say, Mythkeeper, thank you for your timely video on Irison, because a lot of the content that you offered in that video really set the stage for when I ran that campaign. It was a lot of fun. As for a favorite player character, while I am my group's almost forever GM, I can say that one of my recent characters has been a personal favorite of mine. I got to play a character that used the Reflection Versatile Heritage from the book Dark Archives, where basically I was playing the evil clone. I won't go into the whole story here, but basically the campaign started off with our player characters being called together by a noble person to go off on this major quest, and my character, which was an academy wizard, was traveling to meet this group, and along the way, I agreed with my storyteller on this, along the way, my character was waylaid by one of the major villains of the campaign, and he was replaced by a mirrored reflection. And so, for the first roughly 2 years of that game, I was playing a character that was sent to spy on the king and the people working for him, and then not too long ago, we actually got to the point in the story where it was revealed that I was playing this evil mirror clone, and the party had to survive my treachery and then rescue my real character who was imprisoned in a mirror realm. I had a ton of fun with that one.
Yes to all three. Let's see. Well, Reach of the Throne for Starfinder will always have a special place in my heart, but for Pathfinder, it's definitely Strength of Thousands. Quite possibly the most prep, as well as the longest campaign everyone in the group played in that actually got to finish a campaign that a lot of people really hadn't done on that scale before. I mean, it was more than 2 years of us having sessions. Everyone loved their characters, and we had a lot of enjoyable moments, and we definitely didn't play it the right way according to the community, and we didn't care. Everyone had their own personal approach to teaching, and one of the most viewed live plays on my channel is the new lore speakers at around 4K views, which is almost unheard of for my channel for a live performance. We apparently were doing something right where we acted out and role-played the teaching experience that was sorely missing from the module itself, where, you know, like the characters just go out and help people. They don't actually do the teaching with the students. They don't make that bond or connection, and my players were dead set on actually knowing the characters as well as the people of the Magambia, the teachers. They loved Professor OT to death. They loved Ancient Root. They got to know all of the students, and they involved themselves in their lives as well as did things with them, and I really like that. For that reason, we did things in a very unconventional way, which caused people in the game to outright fear the Magambia as much as respect it. I loved GMing the game and saw even experienced role players and new players come together to transform the experience into something that made it ours. And that was one of the most heartfelt things I've ever experienced as a DM, because when you have the old players and the new players working together with each other and sharing that same kind of joy at the table, or even the virtual table, as my case may be, as we played in Foundry VTT, it really is a great experience to have the group on board and just really unified in a goal. As for a favorite character, I would have to say that was an NPC I created for Strength of Thousands. His name is Heros. He is an awakened panda bear that was created particularly to be a character's adopted brother. He is a sorcerer with the Phoenix bloodline blessed by Hao Jin. I enjoyed making him a dropout student to contrast with his adoptive sister, who was heavily book smart and dedicated to going to class and wanting to be a mage, but she had absolutely no magical potential, and he had really too much power that he couldn't control, so they contrasted rather well. And one of the players who joined late actually asked me to play Heros over the summoner they had made, which was turning out to be more trouble than they wanted to figure out at the time, because they didn't really want to manage a cohort at the same time that they were managing a caster. And it's really funny seeing your character played by someone else. And that really made it more enjoyable, especially when it's one of the students of the Magambia who never really attended classes and skipped out on anything they deemed as practical. You know, like helping people or creating something. They really had to find themselves before they were able to, you know, like communicate with other students and actually bring something that brought them into the Strength of Thousands. That special something where he learned that he could create things that people could use, magical items that he often just made for himself that were actually helping humanity. And he managed to bring something to the group and to the students that really helped them. I think he was one of the people who helped Hybrim concoct the airship that he created, and we graduated Hybrim when when they all went on the maiden voyage with him, and that was a really special moment for all of them. And of course that moment where Harrows had to cram because he had to catch up to the others if he was going to become a lore speaker, something that I'll treasure for a long time. It was a really close call for Harrows to become a lore speaker, and he kind of, I want to say he transformed the role. And you could say that was thanks to a very special player.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little interview series. Be sure to check out all of the creators that I interviewed today. You can find all of their links in the description below. I had a really good time. I hope you did as well, and I'll see you next week for more regular content.